So joining me now to talk all about this is Jerusalem Bureau Chief for the Jewish News Syndicate, Alex Traiman. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Do you expect more escalation after this attempted drone strike on Netanyahu's home?
Well, I think we're in a period of intensified escalation as it is, and I certainly think it's going to continue. This is not the first drone strike that's managed to defeat a pass through Israeli air defenses, and Israel has to work as fast as it can to make sure that other drones similarly don't infiltrate Israeli airspace and do damage to critical infrastructure or civilian infrastructure.
I want to draw our viewers' attention to the side of your screen in Tel Aviv here. These are anti-war protesters there in Tel Aviv. Again, live pictures. And the death of Yahya Sinwar puts Hamas in a succession crisis, right? Trying to figure out which name, who's going to be there and fill that power void. What can you tell us about Sinwar's most likely successors, and what impact will this have on the group's direction and the prospect, really, for reviving negotiations with Israel?
Well, first of all, those really aren't anti-war protesters as much as they are protesters against the government and those that want to see a hostage deal for the release of hostages at any price. But the question is, who controls the hostages, specifically after Yahya Sinwar has been killed? And are any of the hostages even alive? And can the government do anything to bring them back without more credible intelligence on where those hostages are? Right now, you're seeing that the central command of Hamas is being decimated, similar to the central command of Hezbollah. Now, instead of having these organized battalions, you have reforming of battalions from among those that are remaining and sort of decentralized leadership. Israel now going back into different places that it has gone through earlier phases of the war, and now trying to defeat the second round, the second formation of the cells. It's not clear yet who's going to take over as the leadership of Hamas. Netanyahu has stated that Sinwar's death represents the end of Hamas's rule in the Gaza Strip.
As our viewers are watching at home, they're wondering, how is this impacting the United States? You know, Biden has repeatedly told Netanyahu he must pay more attention to the innocent lives being taken in Gaza. Let's listen to this.
I told him, baby, show me pieces. Baby, there's red lines that if he crosses in he cannot have 30,000 more Palestinians dead. What I will tell you is I think what he's doing is a mistake. There's no excuse to not provide for the medical and the food needs of those people. They should be done now. I made it clear that if they go into Rafah, they haven't gone into Rafah yet. If they go into Rafah, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah.
So it's just ignore. But we did hear that Netanyahu and Biden met on Wednesday. What do you make of the relationship between the U.S. and Israel right now and looking forward?
I think it's really important to note there in the last clip that Biden told Netanyahu not to go into Rafah. They were warning that there would be a massive death toll of civilians inside Rafah if Israel went there. Israel said they needed to go there in order to complete the battle against Hamas. They moved the civilians out. There were not mass casualties in any sort of event in Rafah. Israel found hostages inside Rafah, and Israel just killed this week Yahya Sinwar inside Rafah. So if Israel had not listened to, if Israel had listened rather to Biden's warning not to go into Rafah, I think that this war would still be going a little bit slower without those successes. Netanyahu understands at this point that the Biden administration is providing assistance for Israel's defense against ballistic missiles with the installation of the THAAD system inside Israel, but not really wanting Israel to go all the way to win the war. Netanyahu is determined to defeat Hamas, to remove it as a political and military operating force inside Gaza, and to do the same against Hezbollah, regardless of anything that the anything that the Biden administration is telling him to do.
Netanyahu's goal for this whole time since October 7th is extinguish Hamas, right? Get them out, extinguish them for good. With Yahya Sinwar being dead, how does that stand now?
Well, I think that this really validates Netanyahu's strategy. People were wondering if they could ever get to Sinwar, and they're going to continue, I think, for the next several months, working inside Gaza to make sure that Hamas cannot reform itself. But the war in Gaza has been going very well. The IDF operating very methodically, very efficiently there, basically negating the threat to the Israeli home front. And now they have to turn the tide in the north as well, because Hezbollah is a much stronger fighting force than Hamas ever was. We see the damage that they're doing on a daily basis in northern Israel, and Israel is determined to stop Hezbollah the same way that they've been determined to stop Hamas.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at sort of a chart, that's the chain of command and everything, and you see all of these leaders getting picked off one by one, the IDF has just really been on a roll recently. Jerusalem Bureau Chief for Jewish News Syndicate, Alex Traiman, thank you so much for joining us and for your insight on the region.
Hey, thank you for having me.